Egyptian man beats an Israelite, Moses is moved by that, it hurts him. And he asks the Egyptian man to stop him from hurting the Israelite. But people come to know what he's done. And so he runs away. And Pharaoh also knows what he's done and he wants to kill Moses. And when Moses runs away, he ends up in the wilderness. He runs into the daughters of the Midian police. And he lives in the wilderness for some time. And while he becomes shepherd, he flocks a flock of his father-in-law's animals. And while he's doing this, he ends up in front of the burning bush where he's introduced to God. And I can imagine when he encounters God and God tells him to go back to Egypt. So can you imagine when God comes to you and he calls you back to go to a place where you killed someone, they wanted you dead, they're after you? I don't think that's something that's very easy for us to do. I don't know about you, but I feel like I would make those same excuses that Moses made. It's risking your life, right? So let's look back at some of the excuses that Moses made. So in Exodus 3, 1 to 11, Exodus 3, verse 11 to 13, the first excuse that Moses made in verse 11, when he basically said, I'm no one. Does this sound familiar? What excuses do we give for not serving? Do we also not immediately disqualify ourselves? How many times have we found ourselves wanting another person to go? Someone else, that you're willing to offer someone else just as quickly. And in verse 13, it says he has no authority. Have you found yourself saying that you have no skills? We often look at other people, they look smarter than us, they look more equipped. But I don't know what that person has gone through. I don't know what journey they took. And yet I'm not willing to even begin. Is it not amazing, sir? Because at this point, when he's making all these excuses, if we look back at when his story starts, seeing the Israelites suffer, that hurt him enough that he ended up killing an Egyptian. Yet at this point in time, when God calls him to go and God is going with him, he doesn't want to go. He's afraid. But yet, the first time we meet him, he was moved, he wanted to do something, but he ended up killing someone. So, do we try and fail? And because we've tried and failed, we no longer want to try again? We all fail. Failure is a part of life. But what do we do when we fail? So a calling that has been given to us all today that I can think of is the Great Commission in Matthew 28. Jesus calls us all to go and make disciples of men and teaching them to obey everything that is commanded. How many of us are willing to heed that call? Are we fearful and timid? Do we look at our past mistakes and close our mouths? Because perhaps the people that I need to go speak to, I've lived that life with them. They know all the things that I've done, and yet I become afraid because they will tell me all the things that I've done. But God said, go speak to them. So when we look at verse 12, God says, I will be with you. Has Jesus also not said that he will be with us till the very end of the age? And you see that in verse 20 of Matthew 28. So here we are when God is commissioning Moses to go. And yes, it's interesting how in verse 1 of Exodus chapter 4, Moses still says, what if they don't believe me? What if they don't listen? I love what God does in verse 2. He doesn't deny that they won't believe me. God doesn't deny that people won't believe us. He doesn't deny that they won't care. But we are still supposed to go. And interestingly, God doesn't focus on the point that they won't believe us. Think of all the excuses that Moses did telling God. At this point, he just shocks. He doesn't say anything at all. He doesn't focus on that. He knows what we're like. He knows that we look at a mountain, we think of how big it is. There might be a path around that mountain that we are not seeing. But yet God says, I will be with you. Oh, sorry. Actually, he says, what is it that you have in your hand? How many of us are more likely to focus on how something will not work out? Yeah. Thank you. The Bible doesn't focus on why Moses had a staff or a rod. Perhaps it's something that he used to flock his father's animals, or maybe it's something that he uses to walk. We don't know. But the most beautiful thing is God takes the thing that Moses already has. He used it every day. He perhaps didn't even see its importance. He didn't even see his true value. But God takes it and changes it into something else, something much bigger than what Moses thought. So this same staff here that we see in verse 3, it turns into a snake. And as you read along in the story, it turns into other things. Moses uses it to part the Red Sea. He uses it to bring the frogs. It turns into so many things. And yet, it was something that Moses had all along. So then, sisters, I would like to ask you today, what is it that is in your hand? We do not have to go very far. You don't have to search for this person or that person, or to learn this or that. I'm not saying that you can't improve yourself. When the Moses in the burning bush, he didn't remain the same, just like the introverted brother that I spoke about to begin with. I'm sure to his family, they never imagined that he could stand there and lead everyone. And yet, God was able to transform him. God was able to use him. That many people look at that brother and are encouraged. I remember leaving that song fest that I went to, and a lot of the people were saying, I felt like this sounds going to be all in heaven. But his family wouldn't have thought that to begin with. Next slide. So, when God calls us, he equips us. And Ephesians 2:10 says, for we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which he prepared for us to do in advance. So what is it about yourself that you would tell God that would surprise him? He knew us while we were still in our mother's womb, and that's in Psalm 139, verse 13. He knows my strength, my weaknesses, even those parts of me that only come out when I'm with certain people. That also means that where I lack anything, he knows better than anyone where to cover me. I can fake it till I make it with the rest of you. But God knows that I need the strength. I need the strength to stand here before you. So, what are we waiting for? Why is it that we're filled with fear? Moses was afraid to return to Egypt. It's not small feat to return to a place where you are wanted for murder, with no certainty of who's your friend and who your enemies are. It is much easier coming up here and standing before you. I may not know all of you, but I all know that we love God and that we wish to serve him. If I go out there and start thinking about what are they going to sing to me, how am I going to love him? And it's this thing that we have in us, yet he said that he is with us, that he goes with us. So another thing as well that Jesus said, he said, do not fear those who kill the body. So what happens if you mock me? What happens if I fail? He will be with you. So like Moses, I am more willing to risk the wrath of God over the wrath of men. Do we not trust him when he says he will never leave nor forsake us? One thing that I want us to consider is the fact that God cares far beyond any of us about the outcome. He is fully invested. All his chips are down. Therefore, will he not equip us to do the work that he wishes for us to do? God not only sent his son to redeem us, he didn't even have to do that. He could have let us perish, but he loved us. And in Romans 5, verse 8, it said that God demonstrates his love because he died for us while we were still sinners. I often wonder that if I was in the crucifixion, do I think I would have been one of the believing Jews? Or would I have been right there with the others who mocked him and who spat on him? And if I'm honest, I probably would have been one of the ones who were spitting at him. Yet Christ, he saw the potential of what we could all be, and he died for us, who were his enemies. So in this love that he had for us, God also gave us a apostle. Sorry, next slide. So in the continual love of God, after he died for us, he still gave us apostles who equip us to be edified, to learn, to know more about him, to prepare us to be able to live in this world. But that's not the end of his gifts. Next slide, please. God also gave us his Holy Spirit. And this Spirit helps us in our weaknesses. He understands that we're weak. He understands that there will be challenges. But this Spirit also helps us to pray. So we will struggle to the point that we can't even pray. And yet this Spirit that he gives us helps us to pray with fervent prayers. And the verse that I really like is the emphasis on verse 27-8, which says, "And he who searches our hearts knows the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for God's people in accordance to the will of God. And we know that in all things God works for good for those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." Are we seeing clearly? He did all those things willingly before we were willing to do his will. Does he no longer care for us? But he cared when we were disobedient, right? That can't be. How can God not help us if we desire to do his purpose? And this same Spirit that God gives us, it is not a spirit of timidity, but it is a spirit of power, of love, and of self-discipline. So we have everything that we need. The question perhaps that we should be asking should be, are we willing to surrender the things that make us unique to God? Are we willing to surrender the things that we have? Next slide, please. So what do you have right now? Sometimes we look at the far things. We look at other people and the things that they're doing, but we're not concentrating on the things that we have right now. So do you have 5-10 minutes that you can spare to call a sister or a brother that you have not seen in a while? Are you able to cook? Are you able to invite someone over and lend them a listening ear? Perhaps you're good at using social media. Can this be a ministry to the Lord? What are you good at? While there is nothing wrong at looking at others and being inspired by them, each of us has our own unique gifts. And that's in 1 Corinthians 7:7. So I want to leave you with this. It's like yeah. So I will leave you with this. And in Romans chapter 12, verse 48, Paul says, "For just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function. So in Christ we, though many, from one body, and each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, then do it diligently. If it is show mercy, then do it cheerfully." So each of us has a gift, and every gift in this room is important. There is no I am no one, or that I am without skill. It doesn't matter what stories and narratives that we tell ourselves. Here is Moses, who killed someone, who himself says is not eloquent and slow of speech, but God chose him. And in 1 Corinthians 1:27 confirms that God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of this world to shame the strong. I may not be smart like them, I may be weak, but he knows who I am already. He knows where to cover me. So there is not a single person less valuable than another in this room. There is no small gift. So at the end of the day, the choice is yours. Will you use that which is in your hands to serve your Lord, your community, and those around you? We know that Jesus tells us that serving others is a service to the Lord. And in Matthew 25:35-40, this is where he's, and I will emphasize actually verse 37, where he says, where they ask him, and he said, the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and thirsty, or thirsty and I will give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit? And the king will reply, I tell you, whatever you did for me, one of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. And this is ultimately Jesus saying, when we serve others, we're serving him. So there is things that you have, there are things that you can do. Some of us have more resources than others. Some of us are able to cook. Open your home, whatever it is that you have, give it to the Lord. Had Moses remained in Mount Horeb but not returned to Egypt, he would not be the man that we know today. Surrender that which we have and ask the Lord for guidance. See what he can do for you. If we do not know what is in our hands, then ask the Lord to do generously. What can't he do for you? Trust him and see. Thank you.
Best, but I'm not sure I can do what you do. So what that another round of applause, that was amazing. Next up, thank you. Next up, we have songs by Sister Sarah. Give her a round of applause.
Good morning, ladies. How are you all doing today? Good? Okay. Please can we all be on our feet to sing some songs? So we're going to sing Just As I Am. Just as I am without one plea, but was shed for me, and thou biddest me come to thee, O Lamb.
Rain is coming.
Just I am thy love, Lord, has broken now to be thine, yet thine. But
Halloween. There's someone talking.
Maybe when you're more. Guess. Quiet. Silence all guests. Okay.
These are two. No. Ask the champion to check because I'm beating the so now it's only 8 months to fly. Oh, I'm the only one.
Yeah, well, it will. You see, that's what's not happening. I can't walk on.
It might not be again.
Hello. Okay. I can't look. Then the co-host can meet all of us. Yeah, in the chance we can meet all of us.
But right now, can you hear anything? That's what. Open that mic again. Share it. Open it again.
Yeah. Oh, it is okay. 1 minute. Yeah. Was it? Where's the show on? She's already on.
Lord, bless my God, Lord, if we are, let me start by faith on I sing out I sing out love song to Jesus. In moments like these, I lift up my voice. I lift up my voice to the Lord. Singing, I love you, Lord. Singing, I love you, Lord. Singing, I love you, Lord. I love you. In moments like these, I sing out a song. I sing out a love song to Jesus. In moments like these, I sing out a song. I lift up love to the Lord. Singing, I love you, Lord. Singing, I love you, Lord. Singing, I love you.
Ada apa? Ada susah. Yes, do.
The mic open.
Udah betul aja. Ladies platform.
Okay, answer the. As the day ran the waters of my soul outside you have known my soul desire and I long to worship you. You are my shield. To you I make my spirit. You are my heart, desire and I long to worship.
Kalian.
I want you more than gold or silver, only you and it's fun. Joy giver and
Huyo anataka kufuatia jini mrefu. Yeah, it's still in one.
To you, let my spirit you are my heart, desire and I long to worship you.
Wow. I will have to do the whole thing session, but unfortunately, due to time, you need to speed up. The next part is the, oh, please take a seat. I'm so sorry. I'm being selfish. I'm sitting down. I'm sorry. The next stage is the introduction of our second speaker, and the introduction will be by Sister Anna from Teaching Church Christ. Sister Anna, please, would you like to come to the applause? We need to give Sister Sarah the singer a round of applause. Oh, thank you. I don't know what to say. To introduce Sister Pat. Is there anybody here who doesn't know Sister Pat? No, maybe the children, our young girls. She's a sister who has been in the Lord. I really knew about her before I got here. There's one thing she doesn't know. I used my sister, my twin sister. I'm a twin, you know. That's the secret you don't know. My first twin is Sister Joyce. And then when we finally move away, we all got married and moved away. We finally ended up here. And then I came here. And if you haven't got a sister, my dear, be with the Lord, you will have a twin. And I've got another twin sister. So I'm not in the middle. I'm so pumped. And my big twin sister is Sister Pat. Her name is Sister Pat. Patience, LSC upon a day, Mrs. And there's nothing to say about her. Because if I want to say it, then we'll not finish too much. But there's one secret that if you promise me that you're not going to tell her, I will tell you. Are you not going to tell her? She's been in the Lord for a long time, and she's very lovely person. Thank you. Short and sweet. Please can Sister Pat, you've got Patricia, I don't the Pat, I've got Patricia, so her name is Auntie Patience. Please can we welcome Sister Patience. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sisters. Thank you so much. Oh, my sister, you've done an awesome kind of presentation. You've done a very lovely job. Okay. The soul of Moses is something that the Lord didn't want to. When I started looking at it, I was going to start relating myself to Moses. My surprise. Thoughts and passion. We are all here to reflect on the question that all answers. That's exactly what 4. It's a well-known story. But as we ponder, let us consider what God has placed in our hands as Christians. How God has given us time, talent, resources. Yes, Jesus, precious one. That we all have in our house in 3, 4, 5. Some are old, some are new. Somebody asked me, when was the last time you looked in your five? Oh, so then don't tell me any problem about your marriage, because that is what's supposed to protect your marriage. And if you don't refer to it, then you don't have a problem. In Exodus 4, you see Moses on Mount Horeb when he was encountering God. God commanded Moses to lead his people after. Let's question this ability. If we all, anytime that we call us, do something. It think that we can be equal. Then later parents ask them to have. So it is started with that. So nice. Oh God. Living in the church. When a brother calls you, once you see that brother calling you, you run. All the way. So Moses just like and full of doubt. God asked him, what is it? Moses said, God. So Moses was ordinary God. Our grandmothers in the villages, they are wrong. They always treat it as ordinary God. But wait till that grandma going to eat you with that rod, with the milk. That's when you realize the power in that rod. God turned this rod into that God's sons, showing his power. So it's whatever God places God's power. That you can't turn anything to anything. You can't use any blessing. But God always can. God will power. It's God. Now, what's mind is there? There is please affecting also. Those are the most people are now. The one of God, doing the one of God in us. How are we open? Or how open in that context? To the world. That is how God that we are able to show. Somehow. How are we doing it now? How are we dedicating time when we start to do this how for the skin doctors to support with you and secrets? How are we? How are we? No, people have started a lot of things, but how really down the line because of the species. We don't have time. Are we